So in the previous lecture, we were discussing about the true relationship between the legal matrimonial tie between Roger Chillingworth and Hester Prynne. But there was no love, no passion. And on the other hand, there was an illegal connection in between Hester and Arthur Dimmesdale. And they were very much passionate and impartially willing to accept each other. So in the third relationship, with a mother and daughter, most of the time Pearl used to ask questions about that black man. So she goes on asking Hester to tell about the black man. She has heard stories about him. You know, mothers are very much, they are in a habit just to tell these stories to their children. So, a very affectionate scene. Well, ask Hester to tell her about that black man. And Hester about her dealings with him and whether the scarlet letter is his mark. Under Pearl's questioning, Hester confesses, "Once in my life," I'm quoting the lines spoken by Hester, "once in my life I met the black man, and this scarlet letter is his mark!" Exclamatory mark, inverted comma close, and I unquote myself. Just remember this. So having reached the depths of the forest, Hester and Pearl sit on the heap of moss beside a brook. Just casually they are moving here and there. Just then footsteps heard on the path, and Hester sends Pearl away, but not before the girl asks whether it is black man approaching and whether Dimmesdale holds his hands over his heart to cover the black man's sign. Before Hester can answer, Dimmesdale comes upon them. They are meeting. The minister looks very, very weak and feeble, and moves listlessly as though he has no purpose or desire to live. He holds his hand over his heart. Suffering was being intensified. So, in this particular chapter serves, we get the information primarily to set the stage for the confession to follow. Now he is about to confess. It is also rich in an atmosphere and symbolism. So the chilly gloom of the forest almost perfectly reflects Hester's state of mind and the mood of the following scene. Nearly every element described here, mentioned here in this particular chapter, carries some symbolic significance. So the narrow footpath through the dense forest is suggestive of moral wilderness. Hester has been forced to follow for the past several years, for particularly 7 years. The story of the black man and his mark is described as the common superstition, yet for Hester. And the black man now appears, and his marks have a special personal meaning. So here Hawthorne connects the letter with the black man and eventually with Dimmesdale's burden. So after 7 long years, both Hester and Dimmesdale talk with each other about the past 7 years. And Dimmesdale confesses his misery and unhappiness, while Hester consoles him and mentions people's reverence for him. The minister feels his guilt and hypocrisy even more. He compares his silence with a public confession and realizes how his hidden guilt is tormenting him. So now she realizes how deeply her silence has permitted Dimmesdale to be tortured by her husband, seizes the moment to reveal Chillingworth's secret. So this torture has led to insanity and that eternal alienation from the good and true, of which madness is perhaps the earthly type. Hester also realizes that she still loves Dimmesdale and she begs his forgiveness for her silence. So in this particular chapter, we come to know that the feeling of love which was kept hidden had started disclosing itself in its most flourishing manner. And Hester was not reluctant to accept this particular truth of her life. And as far as the Chillingworth is concerned, he is the worst of the three sinners. Finally, the author provides hope that his characters will find an escape, but no, a way out of their earthly torment. He explores the conflict between natural law and Puritan law in their escape plans. So during the past 7 years, Dimmesdale has been continually tormented by the dichotomy between what he is and what people believe him to be. So certain kind of innermost crisis all the time went on in his mind. So his parishioners are hungry for the truth and listen to his words as if a tongue of Pentecost were speaking. So there is a reference, it's very important. But as often he has confessed his guilt to God, he has not told to it any other human being. But that means he has not accepted his fault, his guilt, his sin publicly because he was not able to muster enough courage. So the meeting between Hester and Dimmesdale go on and on. Now Hester wants Dimmesdale to know about Pearl. He is reluctant at first. He is not able to face his daughter. But she assures him that Pearl will love him, certainly. And while the child slowly comes towards them, all of nature seems to tag along as her playmate and kindred spirit. So in this particular chapter that we are going to have the end of this novel, there's a variation on the preceding one and develops more fully Hawthorne's contrast between God's law as interpreted through nature and God's law as interpreted by man. So Dimmesdale is sorely tempted by the idea of fleeing. He is the chief proponent of the religious tenets in this Puritan community. Now, further we come to know that he feels he is already a condemned personality, condemned one, by removing the symbol of Puritan law, the Scarlet letter and Puritan society, that formal cap that confined her hair. Hester is transformed. Now, his appearance enables Hester just to make some change in her whole personality. Now she is removing that formal cap that confined her hair. Hester is transformed from the dull, drab and grey fallen woman into the passionate, voluptuous woman who follows natural law and expresses her love for Dimmesdale. So nature shows its support for her action as the sunshine follows her. So the Dimmesdale relies on her to redeem him and believes she can provide the mercy and forgiveness he has not felt at the hands of God. So she decides the time has come for Dimmesdale to meet Pearl, and Hester and Dimmesdale are joined spiritually and genetically to this child. And in her was visible the tie that united them. So while Dimmesdale confesses that he has always been afraid someone would recognize his features in Pearl, Hester simply speaks of Pearl's beauty and sees her as a living hieroglyphic. So Dimmesdale remembers Pearl being kind to him, yet he also feels ill at ease around children and is not very confident about his meeting. Okay? And as far as the Pearl is concerned, in the forthcoming chapter, she is very much willing, she is very greatly desirous that the minister to acknowledge her in public. So while Hester assures her that this admission will happen in the future, Dimmesdale kisses Pearl's forehead in an attempt to mollify her. Pearl immediately goes to the brook and washes off that kiss. It's very unfortunate. There she remains apart from the adults, and the brook babbles cheerlessly on. So, typical upheaval in Pearl's character. She is one who moves the action in this chapter, and her response to Dimmesdale and Hester together does not foreshadow a happy ending. In fact, more than ever, Pearl is a symbol of a passionate act of parents. So she is a constant reminder. She is a constant reminder of the Hester's sin, and if Hester tries momentarily to forget the past, Pearl certainly disapproves. But the happiness is yet to come. So we feel certain kind of change, and in the personality, in the mental makeup of Dimmesdale now, he has entirely changed in between. Having talked with Hester many times, slowly he was getting that encouragement from her, and he was trying to consolidate his innermost feelings and innermost soul just to confess before the public. So a great change in his character. He has been transformed from the weak and dying man who went into the forest. So Hawthorne here examines the nature of the fight and injects his own comments at various points, and he has been showing himself to be improvising himself by his own actions, So Dimmesdale says that he will leave after his election day sermon so that he will be seen as leaving no public duty unperformed. Now further he writes, no man for any considerable period can wear one face to himself and another to the multitude without finally getting bewildered as to which may be true. So the formerly weak, pitiful Dimmesdale leaves the forest with a new sense of purpose and energy. Now he has become energetic. Okay? His thinking is absolutely, entirely transformed by his will and that of Hester. As if possessed, Dimmesdale returns to the town, and a man on fire. He is tempted several times by the irrational, wild, and blasphemous, and what Dimmesdale calls involuntary desire to do wicked things to members of his congregation and perfect strangers. Even there is a minor inclusion of character before the minor characters also. And that name is Hibbins. So he recognizes him as a kindred spirit. So Dimmesdale is the wretched minister, tempted by a dream of happiness. He had yielded himself with deliberate choice, as he had never done before, to what he knew was deadly sin. Now, very important chapter, that is 21, is the first of several chapters that constitute the third scaffold scene, and that leads to the climax of the novel. In these chapters, Hawthorne again brings together the main characters together, and in these few pages illustrate the major conflicts in the light of day and in very public place. So one of the first issues addressed is the difference in public and private behavior. Hawthorne uses pointed satire when he comments that on the most festive day, the people compressed whatever mirth and public joy they deemed allowable to human infirmity, thereby so far dispelling the customary cloud that for the space of a single holiday they appeared scarcely more grave than most of the other communities at a period of general affliction. In further chapter, we get the signals that Hester ponders. Chillingworth smile. The election day procession begins. By now she had understood what was going on in Rosen Chillingworth's mind, and the deteriorating health situation of Dimmesdale. She was also in a state of dilemma, what to do, what not to do. But she had made her mind that her next remaining days would be spent in the company of Dimmesdale if everything moves ahead positively. So, there is a discussion. We continue. The Dimmesdale comes on the scene, whose intellectual prowess is mentioned by Hawthorne. He was very intelligent. as far as giving sermons and showing the sign of intellectuality was concerned. He has changed, showing great energy. Now he has become turned into, from weak into energetic one, an air of purpose in his walk and demeanor. His strength is spiritual. The spirituality, the power of his spirituality can make you consolidated from the depth of your heart. So this is what has been symbolized by, indicated by the great writer Nathaniel Hawthorne. He has an abstracted air as though he hears things not of this earth. So the focus now goes to Hester in her reaction to Dimmesdale, how far away he seems and how remote from the man she met only 3 years ago in the forest. She realizes in the chapter the time is passing. So most of the things you can go through for your own information. She realizes what a great gulf there is between them, and she can scarcely forgive him for his remoteness. So now Nathaniel Hawthorne seems to have been planning for all the things to be settled in their own situation. Meanwhile, what happens, Hester hears the voice of Dimmesdale giving the sermon. While she cannot hear the words, she does hear sympathy, emotion, and compassion mixed with a low expression of anguish. So he may not be telling the world of his sin, but Hester hears the sadness and despair in his own tone because she is so in sympathy with his heart. In these ending chapters, there is a reference of Mr. Havin, Mistress Havin, to foreshadow, because Hawthorne has made use of this character just for the sake of foreshadowing the ending and the emphasis, just to emphasize the intuitive understanding of the human hearts. The old witch reveals that the minister's sin will soon be public knowledge, and when pressed by Hester to explain, says that the forest leaves its marks on everyone, even without a telltale sign such as leaves or twigs in a person's hair. So the evidence is in his demeanor. When Pearl asks about sinful secrets, the witch warns the child that she will see the work of devil one time or another. So in this discussion, Hawthorne not only describes his idea about his sin, about the sin, temptation, and human frailty, but also explains the intuitive nature of human knowledge. So Dimmesdale may have removed himself from Hester's emotional sphere on his day, but she has certainly not lost her intuitive connection with him. It is very, very important. So at the end of Dimmesdale election day, sermon, the crowd emerges from the church inspired by the powerful words they have just heard from a man whom they feel is soon to die. So the moment is the most brilliant and triumphant in the Dimmesdale's public life, because he had, by this particular time, had mustered enough courage to face the public and just to speak open-heartedly as far as guilt is, as far as his sin was concerned. So at the procession of the dignitaries marches to a banquet of the town hall, the feelings of the crowd are expressed in a spontaneous shout of the tribute to Dimmesdale. Never on New England soil has stood the man so honored by his mortal brethren as the preacher. So he has gathered his popularity as far as his eloquence was concerned, and now this particular day, he was going to reveal himself. So it was very important sermon. As he turns to the scaffold, he calls Hester and Pearl to be his side. Now there is nothing to be hidden. He has made himself open-hearted. Suddenly Chillingworth appears and attempts to stop Dimmesdale. But the minister scorns the old physician and cries out to Hester to help him get up to the scaffold. So Chillingworth appears and attempts to stop again, but no, he is put aside. The crowd watches in astonishment as the minister, leaning on Hester and holding Pearl's hand, ascends the scaffold steps. Chillingworth's face now darken as he realizes that nowhere else but on the scaffold can Temsdale escape him. Okay? So in the next lecture, we shall be discussing about the very, very pathetic and very, very typical ending. It is not going to be discussed. The truth is yet to come.